Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hearthcast, where we discuss the strategies, design, and all other aspects of Hearthstone. My name is Andrew, and today I'm joined by Bryce. How are you doing today, Bryce?
I'm doing pretty good, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Now today, we would like to talk about our predictions for the upcoming expansion set after Ungoro. Blizzard has just announced that they will be revealing all the details, well, not all the details, but they will be revealing the initial details of the new expansion at the HCT Spring Championships on July 6th. And we wanted to give our hopes and beliefs as to what Ben Brode and the crew will be bringing us. So first, let's talk a little bit about what we liked in Ungoro.
Definitely one of the biggest things about Ungoro I like the most is that there was a lot of deck diversity as opposed to many of the previous expansions, namely Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, which was pretty much a few aggro decks and Jade Druid and maybe one other thrown in there. Ungoro has done a lot to provide many different classes, actual options as to what kind of deck they wanted to play. I mean, Warriors got a high-end control deck. It got a pretty good aggro deck. I mean, Pirates have weakened a little bit, but they're still seeing a lot and quite powerful. And then Murlocs got kind of the same treatment, except they got like an aggro deck with the Murlocs and more of a mid-range deck with the Elementals. And I think it's just a great thing that they did, and still to this day you can play different decks all the time and still do reasonably well.
Yeah, I really liked what they did with the quest. It was a new mechanic, and it worked out well. It worked out a lot better than the previous mechanics. So they did really well with something that was very ambitious, and I feel like they took a leap there, and it paid off for them.
Now, alternatively, there are a lot of different decks, but I feel like the archetype system is a little stale. I mean, pretty much there is only aggro, mid-range, and control. We're not seeing a lot of decks in the past like we have with Miracle. I mean, there's still kind of a Miracle Rogue, but it's definitely not a top-tier deck or mid-tier deck by any chance. It's almost more of a gimmick deck. Besides, a few people can pull it off, and there's not really much zoo. There's not really much combo going on. It's pretty much set into aggro, mid-range, and control, which, I mean, some of the other archetypes kind of fit in there, but I feel like there needs to be just more archetype and more unique decks all around.
Yeah, definitely, and that's something that I hope that they work on with the upcoming expansion. They have a good tool in which to do it with the quest system, so hopefully they'll expand on that. They won't just sort of leave it off to the side. But we've seen that before. I guess it just depends on whether or not Blizzard deems it as much of a success. But I do agree, there's only a few sort of overarching archetypes that are really dominant, and then everything else has sort of fallen by the wayside, like even more so than before. So hopefully they take a look into that and sort of work to diversify it. Which sort of brings us into our next part of the discussion, which is the changes that we would like to see the most come out of this next expansion.
Now, obviously, like we said, is more deck diversity, but I really hope that they sort of reinforce a lot of the older mechanics that we've seen. Obviously, like, you don't want to revisit old sets, but I mean, I know that's not something they're going to do, but I'd like them to reintroduce the Inspire mechanic to some degree. While it definitely wasn't the most popular mechanic, it was more of a win more mechanic. I feel like if they take a look back at it, they could design better cards where, like, they've kept the Discover effect around, just because it's so popular and it was pretty well received. I think they've gone a little too far with that. I'd like them to tone back on Discover a little bit, making it for a few key cards and not we have a taunt deck, so we're gonna make this taunt minion that can discover another top minion and can, it's I think just discovering has kind of gotten out of control a little bit. But I'd like to see, a lot of people on it's the bottom of the list, but the Grand Tournament was a set I kind of liked a lot, just because I thought that, them taking something like the hero power, which is so core to the game and is a lot of its identity, and making it kind of like an upfront ability. I really like that aspect, and I like to see them maybe not even with Inspire, but kind of put some more power back into some of the hero powers. Maybe giving more options for classes. Maybe a card that lets you use 2 different options. Maybe for the priest, instead of heal 2, it can also permanently give a minion +1 health. I'd like to see some cards that can kind of change how hero powers work.
Yeah, that would actually be really interesting. I gotta agree. I would like to see them put the power back into hero power, and they've sort of messed around with it a little bit in this expansion with the warrior quest, and also with the Dynamancy hunter card. Though only one of them has really seen that much success. But I do really like that idea of being able to change your power and sort of adapt it, which could be another interesting way to tie it back to the last expansion. You could do adapting with a hero power. You kind of get the best of all the worlds. But that's just an off the cuff idea. But I do think that they should work on putting more emphasis on the hero powers, because a lot of and more importantly, making it an interesting interaction. Because I know that they've put, I think it's Kazakus. Kazakus is the one that gives you the free hero power, right?
No, that's Raza the Unchained for the priest class that does that.
Okay, yeah. Okay, him. It's mistaken. But yeah, Raza. I've seen him. I've seen a lot of Brian Kibler's streams, and he does that a lot. And it's it's a really interesting concept, and it's really cool. But the effect of it is like lacking. Like, it's insanely good with value and stuff, but ultimately you're just healing yourself, and you're just sort of like postponing the game just arbitrarily. Like, there's no, like, once you have the condition met and you play the card, that's it. There's no other pizzazz or any sort of effect on the game. It's just you just instinctively play it. Like, I think there was even one game where he played it and he actually could have played it much better, but he was so used to just going autopilot heal his hero that he missed that. And so I think they could definitely work on making the more interesting stuff and changing up the hero powers. And that would probably be a really good way to go about that, and sort of reintroduce the Inspire mechanic with that.
And I actually, looking at some custom cards, one that kind of fits into this theme that I saw and liked a lot, it was actually a hunter spell. And what it did is you discovered a 1-mana hunter spell, and then that spell just became your hero power. So you had things like Hunter's Mark, which obviously that would be pretty powerful, especially for a hunter deck. I mean, just setting minions held at 1 you can do it every turn. It's a little powerful, but it just added a whole lot of like interesting thought process on what else they could do. Kind of changing your hero power to be a spell of that class is something I think is really cool and could be done really well. I really liked changing up the hero powers, and Sir Finley Murgleton was another one I liked. Using a different class's hero power with any class was a lot of fun, and it had a lot of strategic value to it as well, as it was seen in a lot of top tier decks.
Oh yeah, plus it's just plain fun. Like getting getting class cards from a class that's not your own always leads to a lot of interesting interactions. Because I mean, like that's the whole reason that class cards were made. You know, that's the whole design philosophy of them. Is something that is okay in priest might be insanely overpowered in a warrior deck, or vice versa. Um, but then when you have that matchup, and you like steal one of their cards, and you steal that card that suddenly becomes OP in your deck, and there's at least a lot of fun interactions.
Something else that I'd like to see in the new expansion is more cards, or more decks that worry more about board control rather than. I know this is like a big hit on aggro. I mean, not a lot of people like aggro in the first place, but way back in vanilla, board control was everything for almost no matter what deck you were playing. It was, you always wanted to control the board. And some minions were good just because like Chillwind Yeti is still a good pick in arena, but that used to be one of the best picks in just normal draft or normal play mode. And I think that's something I'd like to see. I mean, obviously not as boring as Chillwind Yeti, just play a minion that has some stats on it, but ways that make board control more important, not just okay. So my opponent has played some minions, but they're not that important enough that I have to worry about, so I'm just going to go face or do my own thing. More interaction with the minions is what I'd like to see. I mean, right now, there's quite a bit of it. They definitely improved a lot, but I still think it could use some work, and especially in some archetypes and, some matchups.
Definitely, and I think we'll see a bit more of that as the new expansion is released, because they're definitely learning. Like the development team is learning. Like they're not, like, once again, like one of the best cards of this expansion, in my opinion, was the Tar Creeper, because that design was like a stroke of genius in just stopping the aggro, but not really giving it an overwhelming presence. And it was like a good, very well handled way of doing that. So I do have confidence that they'll be able to tackle that, and I do hope that the meta sort of shifts more to control style decks, because personally I like the control style decks. I feel like if you have the more time, you can do more interesting stuff with the control decks. But that also kind of goes against what the majority of players want, which is just like fast wins. Fast wins gets the quicker rank ups. If you have two decks with the same win rate, you want to go with the quicker deck because that'll rank you up quicker. But I think that if they can make it worthwhile to do the control stuff, we could really see some really cool stuff. I think we already have seen a few cool things. Like one of my favorites is with Elise and in the priest deck, Elise and Shadow Visions. That one's a really fun one. It's really fun to get possible 3 packs worth, possible 15 extra cards, maybe even more if you're lucky.
Get some releases out of those packs, and then your packs can be spawning packs, so you can open packs while you opening packs.
Yo, dog. But yeah, so that's kind of what I hope that the direction that they take for it.
Yeah, and one final mechanic that I'd like to see more of that has barely been touched is positioning on the board. very few minions and spells worry about positioning, which is fine. I mean, it kind of complicates the game, especially for newer players. Is they have to figure out, okay, should I put this minion next to this one? But I think that's something that adds so much strategic value and really shines in like player skill. Is when, especially with the Shaman Flame Tongue Totem, positioning minions around that in a way that you can get the most use out of it. Make sure, if you're ending a turn, you usually want to taunt next to it, so obviously your taunt minions are bigger and can deal with bigger threats, but also, you got to worry about playing your charge minions and maybe attacking with like something that's next to it first, and then playing a taunt minion next to it, so you get the bigger attack off, but then you also can buff up your taunt minion. Things that worry about positioning and order of events, I think, is something that can really elevate player skill level, which is something that I know a lot of people kind of criticize Hearthstone for, is because a lot of times you just find a good deck and it kind of plays itself. It's not really skill intensive. You don't really have to know the deck in and out. Just play these cards and then do whatever the deck needs to do. So I mean, they've added some. I mean, obviously, like some of the AoE effects, like the Hunter's Explosive Shot and the new Mage Meteor that everyone's such a big fan of. I think maybe less on that scale, just doing a bunch of damage, but maybe like that one brawl and also it's one of the fights in the Karazhan event is minions. It was one or the other, but minions on the left get taunt, minions on the right get charged. And that one was really fun because you had to kind of figure out the best way to, which minions you wanted to have taunt, which minions you wanted to charge in. It was a lot of fun thinking about that. And that's something I'd like to see more of as well.
Yeah, I really like that. It does bring up an interesting point, because that was one of the big, like, sort of aha moments I had with the game, is sort of realizing the positioning and realizing just how much thought goes into that. And so if they can do that and sort of bring that idea to the front, it would definitely help out the game. I think it would definitely raise the skill floor and the skill ceiling. But not in an unnecessarily like complicate things just to complicate them, like just so you can say like, oh, I play the hardest game, because let's be like, Hearthstone isn't the hardest game. It's
not by a long stretch.
No. But yeah, so kind of getting all that out of the way, looking at the past and all that. What would you like to see? What would you like to see in this expansion? Like, what would you like to see come back? As far as like, what would you like to see new?
Obviously, new mechanics are my favorite. I've always loved. I think every expansion has had its own new mechanic. Every major expansion has had its own new major mechanic. I'm really excited. Like, I don't really have any specific ideas, but I'm always really excited for a new mechanic. It gives a whole new depth and a whole new angle to play the game at, and it kind of, a lot of the times, like, it'll make old cards that are really bad, it'll make them really good. The one that comes to mind is the Gadgetzan Ferryman, which was an immune treat to Gadgetzan, which was an awful card. To pretty much have Youthful Brewmaster's effect, but you have to meet a condition first. It made no sense, but then they made Quest Rogue, where any card that can bounce cards back is, super valuable to them. I really like new mechanics. I just like to see something that maybe helped control decks, because like you said, I think control decks are the most fun. It gives, obviously, the longer the game goes on, you get more thoughts, you can make more plays, you can kind of set yourself up to do things later in the game, and I just want some kind of mechanic or option that can help control decks shine.
Yeah, I would definitely like that. I want to see, beyond the new mechanics, I do want to see new cards from old mechanics that sort of buff up the existing cards. One right off the top of my head being death rattle ones for like the priest quest, which is one of the sort of underperforming decks. I would like to see that. I would like to see stuff for all the decks, or for all the quests rather, like the quest decks, just to bring new options. So we're not seeing, we're not seeing the same thing. We're not seeing like, oh, it's quest rogue. Get ready for more shadow steps and ferrymen, or like, oh, I don't know. But like warriors and the Stonehill defenders, like stuff like that. I'd like to see more options so that we see more of a variance in that. Plus, I would honestly like to see quests like being more expanded upon. I'd like to see more quests and get more of the archetypes in, and try to bring more of those ideas to the forefront, because I think one of the biggest fears with the quest was they were going to be too good, and everyone was just going to be focused on playing the quest, and everyone would just be playing the same card. But there are, I think Blizzard did pretty well with it, to the point that you don't really need the quest for most of the classes. Like pretty much all of them, except for maybe like Rogue.
Yeah, Rogue's the only one that kind of relies on. I mean, you got the Miracle Rogue, but that's not like, right now it's not a great deck at the moment.
Yeah. So, but so I think that adding more quests will only be good. I think that they can definitely work around with them and see how that works. They're definitely going to have to do some sort of limit. Same thing that they do a limit with legendaries. They're just going to do an additional limit with only one quest.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to get like Quest Row 1 and Quest Row 2 together, and they're going to find some crazy way to make them coincide, and then you're going to have like 5/5s that also have like Wind Fury or some shit, some stuff.
Yeah, and actually, what you're saying is something that reminds me of the Old Gods expansion, kind of with Cthulhu, because to me, Cthulhu is kind of like the first quest that kind of, there was like a completion, but you just worked towards it, and it was just better the more you worked on it. And, Cthulhu is one of my favorites because obviously, with each expansion after Whispers, it's kind of gone a little further away and further away and further away. But I still, to this day, see some decks doing some new stuff with Cthulhu. And that's definitely, what I'd like to see with Quest too is, they kind of evolve as new sets get released, and, they're played in different ways, or, with a new twist on them. And that's something that I've always liked, is when they kind of help support older expansions cards and newer expansions. Maybe not like the focus, but kind of as, a secondary. Hey, we remember we made these cards and we want to, flesh them out a little more. And one that comes to mind is actually, I built a rogue deck around the Razor Petals, because I thought that was a cool mechanic. I mean, there's only like 2 cards that kind of support. You have the Razor Lash, the Lasher, and then the other one that gives you 2 of the cards in your hand. But I like that it's just a little spell that deals 1 damage, where you can, buff it with extra spell damage. You can get them, have them draw you cards from like the Gadsden Auctioneer. That works great with the Rogue Legendary, the Shares of the Corpse Flyer, because it's just adding cards that you can use. And if you use it right, I mean, I didn't have any like super success, but it was still a really fun deck to play, and I still play sometimes. So yeah, definitely adding more cards that kind of work with past cards is something I'd like to see as well.
Yeah. So, kind of putting that aside, putting the past aside, and looking square on the future, we got a picture here looking at the Year of the Mammoth, looking at the sort of few hints that we do have of what the next expansion is going to be. And so we have some ideas. Bryce, you want to?
So
Give your-
anyone who has seen it, so the picture just kind of gives the very general game plan that Blizzard has for the Year of the Mammoth. Obviously, it shows that the years, from the Year of the Kraken is changing to the Year of the Mammoth. Then it shows the next thing is the first expansion. Obviously, this is before they announce it, so it just says expansion 1, but it's covered in like leaves and petals and that stuff we know is iconic to Ungoro now. And then it shows expansion number 2, which is obviously the one that they're going to be talking about next week. And it's going to it's pretty much it has the stamp with a question mark, but around that it has like almost looks like it's a blue ring, and then there are like some arcane symbols floating around it. A lot of people have thought maybe Ice Crown, just it is blue, it is that icy blue color. But to me, it's more arcane looking. So I personally think it's going to be something to do with magic, obviously, but I'm thinking more specifically Dalaran. It being a very prominent location and city in World of Warcraft lore. For anyone who knows, it's where Archmage Antonidas is. It's where the first Guardians were. So I think that's probably where they're going to go. I mean, I'd love just as much as anyone for it to be an Ice Crown expansion. But I personally, it's obviously Ice Crown would deal a lot with undead, and they kind of already did like an undead expansion with Naxxramas, so I think it's going to be more along the lines of like Dalaran themed.
Yeah, and if I remember right, I think there was a data mine card back for one of the ranked seasons that was an actual like Dalaran card back. So that sort of supports your theory. And I kind of think the same thing. I don't think that it will be like Ice Crown Citadel just on its own, but I do think that Ice Crown Citadel will take a part in it. Because they are arcane, but there's still stuff in the background that are more runic. And one of the other things pointing to this is coming from a WoW player. The Death Knights, their class campaign, all is sort of leading up to the Lich King sort of becoming more active and becoming more of a force in the world again. And you can even see this, like the Frost Death Knights even get to see the Lich King himself just sort of randomly throughout the world, like the ghost of him or the spirit of him. So what I think that they're planning to do on the WoW front is for the next expansion, I think they're planning on making him a figurehead of some sort and sort of bringing him back, because I mean, honestly, it worked with Illidan. You slapped Illidan on the cover. I mean, obviously you made a great expansion behind it, but I mean, getting the people through the door was largely in part to Mr. Preparation. So I think they're gonna take a note from that and try to do the same thing with the Lich King. And so the idea with that for Hearthstone's purposes is to sort of bring him back into the light and bring him back into everyone's view and get people like either remembering and being like, oh yeah, that was a guy. Which, I mean, I'm sure anyone who knew him hasn't really forgotten about him, but I mean, he's taken a back seat for a while now. But also, it can take a lot of players, a lot of the more casual Hearthstone players who just sort of play the game but don't really know much about where the characters come from, and sort of introduce them to the idea of this, and then sort of promote then the cross game communities.
Yeah, Blizzard is definitely big on their cross exposure between their different games with all the promotions they do.
Oh yeah. So I mean, that's sort of just priming them up and getting everyone ready to go.
I would you think there would be another WoW expansion this soon? I mean, Legion's only been out a year.
Yeah, no, not nearly soon, but I mean, because I mean they're still working on 7.3 right now, and then after that is 7.3.5, and then who knows after that. So there's quite a bit to go still, but there's definitely a lot of things like a lot of whispers, a lot of stuff stuff going on underneath that I think will sort of all culminate and see. So
if you think it's kind of Dalaran plus Lich King themed, what do you think some mechanic or card design wise might be?
That one's a really tough one. I can't really say for sure. I mean, the obvious answer is going to be Death Rattle, but they kind of already done that. So it's really hard to say, but it might be more of like revival mechanics, because there are still plenty of them, but there's not a whole bunch of them.
Mostly Priest has gotten revival mechanics with Resurrect and Onyx Bishop. I think that being magic based, it's going to be a mechanic that has to deal with spells, which I mean vaguely, loosely is supported by their arena changes now that you actually see spells in arena much more than you used to. I mean, I don't think they designed a whole expansion with a new mechanic that can't really be used in arena, but I think now with the arena changes to where you actually see quite a bit more spells as options, it could still work. But I mean, it's hard to say because kind of mages have always been the class that focuses on spells with a little bit of priest and maybe even a little warlock in there, but they've surprised me before with some of their themes. Like obviously on Goro you think beast or you think druid and hunter, but actually those are the druid class is almost non-existent, and hunter's just it's in the mid ground. So who knows what they'll do with it.
What would you think, given if it does become either Ice Crown Citadel as a whole or Ice Crown Citadel is in there and they focus a little bit more on the Lich, what would you think if they added another hero class, being the Death Knight?
See, now that is something I've always loved the idea of, but design-wise, I don't think they could get it to work, not with just one. And then I'm pretty sure Ben Brode has said before that he never plans on adding another class just because he has what he once said, but designing a whole new class would mean that you have to first of all make it compatible with a large majority of the neutral cards, which isn't too hard because neutral cards are pretty basic. You have like the Loot Hoarder for card draw, you have a couple cards that heal a little bit, they're pretty big, but you'd also have to design a set of basic class cards, and then obviously if they made a new class, then that class would have way fewer cards than all the other classes, because they're not going to be like, oh, we're going to make some new cards and oh, we're going to pretend that they were in a Goro. Obviously that's not going to happen. So would they just add twice as much Death Knight cards? But what if the people that may not like Death Knight, why is Death Knight getting all these new cards? And then they'd have to somehow be able to make it work in Wild, which obviously if they have so much fewer cards, like they have put a lot of work into Wild, and maybe it wouldn't be a huge priority, but you can't just make a new class and have it not represented at all in Wild. So I think it'd be cool. I definitely love new classes. Just add so much more content, so much more fun, so much more deck building to the game. But I think from a design point, it'd be way too much work and probably not work very well, and would just take months and months and months of play practice.
That could very well be. So, but I suppose we'll have to wait at least until next week to find out.
July 6th is the date.
That's right. So once that date is up, we'll be back and see, just what we were right about, if we learn enough about it. We might just get a simple name drop. We might get more. Who knows? But we'll find out. But for now, let us know what you guys think. What are your guys' predictions? What are your thoughts, hopes, dreams about it? Nightmares about this past expansion? Just let us know. Let us know what you think. And we will see you later.
See you later, guys.